Good morning and welcome everyone. A little bit of housekeeping. Please do keep your masks on. We are in the middle of a resurgence of COVID, and we would request all the audience to keep a tightly worn mask on their face so that the speaker has the liberty to not wear one, should they so desire. So I'm repeating, please wear your mask on your nose, sir. Thank you so much. So a very warm welcome to everyone. We will start today's proceedings with a lighting, a ceremonial lighting of the lamp. I'll invite Reverend Dobum Tulku, Professor S.R. Bhatt, Pempa Dorji, Professor Pempa Dorji, and we have monk Yeshi Lundok from the monastery in Karnataka, and myself. So we'll start with that, and then we'll start with the academic part of the proceedings. So. Please take our place on the podium. Professor Bhatt, Rinpoche, आप इधर से. Good morning again. I will now request Rinpoche Dobum Tulku, in his capacity as the head of the WBCT and the chief organizer, to say a few words to introduce the overall theme of this conference. I think it's better, Rinpoche, if you just use the mic that you have in front of you. It might be.
Good morning, good afternoon, and namaste, tashtile to all. Mayaji said I should say something about overall theme. That is very big order. But what I am planning to do is to give the idea of how the concept is developed. First of all, the seminar webinar is the second in the series of Science of Mind as organized by us. Now I'm going to speak in very simple words and simple sentences. So that I know what I'm talking about. This theme, science of mind, we're using the term science, we're using the term mind. So by science, we are referring to an inquiry or study, investigation, whatever you say, to the world, into the world both inwardly and outwardly. And that is verifiable by anyone repeating the same experiment. That is what I understand by science. When we say mind, we are talking about the thinking power that exists in all of us. Nothing beyond that. Nothing outside of it. That mind may be sensible, that mind may be sensible, scientific, and relevant for a purpose, or it may also be opposite of all that. It is still mind. We are hoping that there is a conversation between science of mind, one side, and philosophy, particularly DIGNÄGA'S logic on the other. When we say logic or pramana, we mean the correct way of understanding the objects, the instrument of knowledge, the word correctly called pramana, or valid cognition. We in India, in everyday life also, we say pramana. He got pramana patra, right? So that much is pramana here also. Acharya Dignaga, who was one of the foremost figures in the history of Indian logic, postulated that there are only two instruments of knowledge or valid cognition, pramana. What are these two? Perception, that's pratyaksh, and inference, अनुमान. We all use अनुमान. अनुमान लगा सकते हैं, like that. His followers in ancient India, like Acharya Dharmakirti, points of perceptions in the most reliable cognition. Perception is the most reliable cognition. It brings me a Tibetan phrase. Ngosum le lingwe sama meve. The perception is most reliable and dependable cognition. In pre-Buddhist India, before Acharya Dignaga, it was always traditionally held the pramana to be basically three: pratyaksh, anuman, and the third one, agama, or shabda. The original idea seems to be like this. Just as there is an ancient hierarchy of beings between ordinary, humanity, and God, the God, the highest. The three paramanas also have an ascending order of superiority. Pratyaksha comes from the senses. Anuman comes from reasons, and agama or shabda comes from tradition and scriptures. Later on, scholars and teachers added more and more systems to pramana. Jaimini, the author of Mimamsa Sutra, and Kumarila Bhatt, he is well known in among the Tibetan scholars also. We call it Shenu Malen. And he's Naya school teacher, and his followers assert there are 6 paramanas. There's no time to narrate all the names. Lokayatas or Charavaks accept only sense perception in one way, they can be the originator of materialism. Maybe, I don't know. One present-day scholar statesman seems to be eager to talk the subject in connection with dualistic and non-dualistic. Dualistic science and non-dualistic science. He further says that scientists are now coming around to the Vedantic school, Vedantic view, that consciousness is, in fact, probably the primary entity which is basis of matter. That's his view, this scholar's view. Late Professor Lalwani Joshi, my respected Kalyana Mitra, talks of early Indian literature in terms of two categories: sacred and secular. Lalwani Joshi also calls DIGNAGA as founder of School of Critical Philosophy. I'm happy that Dr. Maya Joshi ji is moderating this webinar. It's just appropriate. At this point, one verse I read during my young age in Tibet to my mind, that is from a text written by 14th century Lama Tsongkhapa. It reads through roughly like this. Manjushri urged Dignaga to write Parmana Samuchaya, saying that this will become the eyes of all people in the future. Rowa kunji mitu joro she. We in North, that's Tibet, take it to be true, yet at the same time we say Parmana Samuchaya and 7 texts by Dharmakirti have nothing to do with the path to the state of Bodhi. This is most illogical. That is the end of the quotation from Tsongkhapa's. This story puts me in dilemma. Should I put Dignaga and Dharmakirti's text in sacred or secular? It's also a challenge for us in this seminar. In practical matters, an often faced question is, what is the right thing to do? What is the wrong one? Such questions arise not only about issues relating to an individual's spiritual path, but also to things relating to social concerns human values need to be given importance. This is the emphasis given by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. We should be sensitive about the well-being of others. If we are concerned only about oneself and do not bother about outside world, the purpose of talking about science of mind is lost. Thus, we have to abandon the thinking culture of I don't care. We should be promoting the caring culture, not culture of promoting violence. So while seeking the mind, recognizing all that is generated by the mind, we wonder if we can look even more closely and find compassionate mind. IIC is the most suitable venue for gathering of intellectuals, scholars, and artists, etc. However, ideas of silence and philosophy often retire a quiet surrounding, away from busy schedules, busy cities such as the national capital. It is desirable to have a space for retreat because soothing environment and surrounding to have in increasing, they do have increasing thinking power and develop ideas. Therefore, to have a retreat space is important. In fact, I do have a small space in the outskirts of busy city of Gurgaon. This is not occasion to narrate the history of that small space, but I can say here that I strongly feel that this space has the potential to nurture an ideal place for such purpose, and I propose to call it an academic retreat. A place definitely not for pomp and show. Academic because it was His Holiness Dalai Lama's wish to have an academic space. Retreat because it has to be quiet and humble place. My mantra here is small is beautiful. By coincidence, retreat also sounds similar to a Tibetan word, ritu. In Tibet, there used to be such places. I used to have a small ritu called Dobum ritu. Ritu means a quiet place for practice and thinking. It carries the meaning of simple living. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for so wonderfully bridging the binaries of the sacred and the secular, and social engagement and abstract philosophical pursuits. I think IIC, as you rightly say, is an ideal space for it. We are very fortunate to have with us Professor S.R. Bhatt, who, despite frail health, is with us. It's a great honor, Professor. He doesn't need an introduction, but I will still do the honors for those who may not have heard him earlier. Professor S.R. Bhatt is the General President of the Indian Philosophical Congress and the Akhil Bharatiya Darshan Parishad, which is the All India Philosophy Association. He retired as professor and head of the department and coordinator of the UGC Special Assistance Program at the Department of Philosophy of the University of Delhi. His main research fields are ancient Indian philosophy, logic, epistemology, ethics, value theory, philosophy of education, philosophy of religion, comparative religion, and social and political thought. So Professor Bhatt is going to speak to us, give us a general overview of the significance of Dignaga as the father of medieval Indian logic. Professor Bhatt will be leaving soon after his talk. So if there are any questions, please raise them immediately after he speaks. As for the other speakers and questions, we can decide on the way we want to proceed with that. So Professor Bhatt, please. May I please repeat, please do wear your mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Maya Joshi ji. At the outset, let me express my thanks to Dr. Dobum Tulku for conceiving this particular theme, a dialogue between modern science and DIGNÄGA'S logic. Dialogue has been one of the important techniques of philosophizing in Indian philosophical arena. We have a saying, Vade Vade Jayate Tattva Bodha. The knowledge of reality is acquired through mutual debate and discussion, so that we can have a correct approach to reality. And this dialogue between philosophers and empirical scientists is highly needed because it complements the standpoint of each other. In India, right from the very beginning, philosophical thought has been oscillating between two tendencies. One regarding the ultimate reality as permanent, immutable, and the other regarding the ultimate reality as mutative, changing. The first one is known as Atmavada, and the second one is known as Anatmavada. Always there has been healthy exchanges between the thinkers of Atmavada tradition and Anatmavada tradition. Lord Buddha spearheaded the Anatmavada tradition. Now, in order to formulate both Atmavada and Anatmavada, an analysis of knowledge is needed, because it is through knowledge that we approach reality. Knowledge is the only gateway to understand reality. And we understand reality, we try to understand reality so that we are profited from that for betterment of our living. Lord Buddha was, as I think he will be explaining in the Mangalacharana, Jagat Hiteshine. He always worked for the wellness of the entire world, entire cosmos. Charat Bhikkave Charikam Bhojan Hitaya Bhojan Sukhaya. So, it is the goal of a philosophical enterprise to know the reality so that we are profited for a betterment of our living. But there are two different alternative viewpoints whether we should have knowledge first or reality first. Whether knowledge is knowledge of reality and therefore primacy is of reality, or it is through reality that we know and therefore primacy should be given to knowledge. It is through knowledge that we structure the nature of reality. So we have these two tendencies technically. Let me use Sanskrit terms. We call them as Manadhina Meya Siddhi and the other is Meyadhina Mana Siddhi. Lord Buddha subscribed to the later viewpoint that it is the reality which has to structure our theory of knowledge. As per the reality, we should have epistemology or theory of knowledge. Whereas the Atmavad tradition said that no, it is through knowledge that we apprehend reality and therefore knowledge should be given prominence, Manadhina Meya Siddhi. So these are the two, you can say, debating traditions available in classical Indian philosophical literature. When it is pointed out that Meyadhina Mana Siddhi, that is, it is the reality which has to be kept in mind in structuring epistemology or theory of knowledge, DIGNÄGA pointed out that we should have epistemology as per the requirement of ontology, reality. And he said in his Pramana Samuchaya, which is his classical work, that Manam Dvividham Meya Dve Vidyata. There are two types or two modes of knowledge or knowing. He equates knowing and knowledge. There are two types of knowledge depending upon two types of reality. One is the reality which is perceived and the other is the reality which is conceived. The perceptual reality is one type of reality and the conceived reality or conceptual one is of another type. The two are quite different. The perceptual reality is reality per se, and that reality per se is in a flux. It is constantly changing. Nothing is permanent. Every moment we have newer and newer experiences, and therefore reality is not something which is immutable. Every moment we have a newer and newer grasping of reality through our senses. It is the cognitive senses which help us to know the changing reality. But then on the basis of that changing reality, we formulate, we conceptualize a reality which is not changing, and therefore we call it as a conceptual reality, but it is say one step away from actual reality. Actual reality is something which is transitory, and the conceived one is quasi-permanent. Because a concept can be used for two or more than two moments, but even this concept also is not ultimately real. And prior to the Naga, another very important thinker, Nagarjuna, pointed out that there is a Savrati Sat, the empirical reality, and the Paramartha Sata, the trans-empirical reality. And the trans-empirical reality is something which is to be experienced. It is not to be conceptualized, and that experience is something which is, you can say, giving peace and bliss. So that sort of experience is the goal of our existence. Anyway, Dinag pointed out that there are two types of objects. The perceived or the given one, and the conceived, the conceptualized one. And they are altogether different. They should not be mixed up. Accordingly, there are two ways of knowing: perspective. You have referred to that perspective, and the other is anumana, perceptual cognition and inferential cognition. Perceptual cognition is available to us through our sensations. Whenever an object comes to the cognizing mind, the cognizing mind receives a sensation of the object. Objects may change, then our perceptions of the object also changes. The outer reality is never permanent, and therefore our sensations are also never permanent. So the perceptual reality is something which is constantly changing. But this reality is not useless. According to Buddhist logicians, everything which is real has to serve some purpose. It should be of some use. So a perceptual cognition gives rise to the conceptual one. From pratyaksha, we pass on to inference. Pratyaksha is the foundation. Pratyaksha is the basis of inference. And through inference, we make use of our knowledge. Perceptual knowledge is not directly useful. It is useful with the help of inferential knowledge, and but inference is not possible without perception. Therefore, we use a technical term. This anumana. Anu is coming after. Man means knowledge. A knowledge which precedes some other knowledge, and that knowledge which precedes is perceptual. We get the sensation, and then from that basis we infer. The classical example is that at a far off place we see smoke and we infer fire, because of a necessary connection between smoke and fire. So we have therefore two, you can say, modes of knowledge, pratyaksha and anumana. Of course, Buddha Vachana can be taken under Shabda, he has referred to Shabda, but Shabda also is to be reduced to Anuman only. Technically we call it as a Antarbhava, subsumption. We subsume all other modes of knowing under inference. And therefore inference is a very broad mode of knowing. Pratyaksha also, Pratyaksha which is in the form of sensations, is of two types in the Buddhist tradition. One is the worldly sensations, sensations of the worldly objects, and other is trans-empirical, trans-worldly, yogi pratyaksha. Dignaga believes in yoga pratyaksha, and through yoga pratyaksha, for yogi pratyaksha we need not go to Anuman. We have direct apprehension of the reality, and that can help us to realize the self. Self-realization is a very important enterprise in Buddhist tradition. We have to realize the self, that self is not these worldly objects. Self is not the objects which attract us, which enamors us, say, which creates a longing for us. So these are not the ultimate. The ultimate is to be in peace and in bliss. That is nirvana. Nirvanam shantam, nirvanam sukham. So self-realization is the goal of all philosophical enterprise, and Yogaja Pratyaksha helps us in that respect. But for our worldly purposes, it is Anumana which is needed, and Anumana is a knowledge necessarily derived from preceding knowledge. So there always there are two steps in Anumana, the preceding and the succeeding. The preceding leads to the succeeding, but there has to be necessary connection between preceding and the succeeding. Any preceding cannot give rise to any succeeding. There has to be an existential tie, some connection, which we may call in entailment in Western logic. So the preceding one entails the succeeding one, and technically, therefore, Dignag uses two terms. One is gamaka and gamya, that which leads and that which is led. So the preceding one leads, and the succeeding one is led. It is the succeeding one which is of practical use. And therefore, knowledge is always to be used. Knowledge is not a futile exercise. Now, for this, Dignag has given a formal system of logic. The Atmavad tradition gave one system of logic which was formulated by Gautama in his Nyaya Sutras. But Dignag formulated another system. In case of Gautama, it was non-formal. Means Anumana directly deals with reality according to Gautama. But according to Dignag, Anumana does not directly apprehend the reality. Anumana apprehends the reality through perception, through pratyaksha. So, it is the concept which are the tools for influential play. From perceptor, we formulate the concepts. So, in the Nyaya tradition, we are concerned with the actual fire. But in the Buddhist tradition, not the actual fire, but the concept of fire. From one concept we go to another concept. So it is always a play of a concept. And this play of concept is relational in nature. In the Nyaya tradition, relations are real. The relation between two objects or between the knower and the known, they are real. But in Buddhist tradition, relations are not real. All relations are conceptual. And therefore, we have examination of relation. There is a text called examination of relations, and all relations are reduced to concepts only. Relations are not real. Relations are not real from another viewpoint also, because relations lead to attachment. And we have to be detached from all worldly life, and therefore Buddha denied relation, and Buddhist thinkers therefore also refuted reality of relation. Relations are all samvriti. They are all our conceptual making, and that is why the reality is not having relation as its essence. DIGNAGA defined pratyaksha as pratyaksham kalpana podham. Pratyaksha is divide of all kalpana, and kalpana he defined as nama jatyadi yojana. That is, you don't have any name, you don't have any class character, you don't have any essence, it is pure existence. So in reality is pure existence, and in pratyaksha also we apprehend only pure existence which has no essence. But essence is provided later on by our mind. Mind plays a very important role, and therefore also you have science of mind. This heading is very much meaningful. It is mind which constructs the universe. It is the mind which enables us to have a view of reality and a way of life. And therefore study of mind has been given great emphasis in the Buddhist tradition, Buddhist psychology, particularly Vasubandhu in his Abhidharma Kosh. Vasubandhu was teacher of DIGNAGA, and he has analyzed the functioning of a mind. And another text is there, which is Abhidharma Sangaho, which gives us how there is a functioning of mind, a stream of consciousness. Mind is nothing but consciousness, and how there is a rise of consciousness to apprehend an object, and the end of consciousness after apprehending the object. The point therefore is that pratyaksha or perception is therefore divide of all relations. Vasubandhu also defined it as tato arthat vijnanam. From the object we get the sensations, and those sensations constitute perception. But perception, as I said earlier, are useful in enabling us to undertake inference, and through inference we formulate our modes of knowing. perception is beyond language. So sensations cannot be described through language. But inference can be described through language. DIGNÄGA therefore gives us a theory of language. It's technically it's known as apoha. In language, we have words. Words do not directly refer to reality. Words are concepts. Concepts, of course, are formed out of percepts. But apo is a play of concepts only. So, for example, the example given generally is a cow. When we say cow, it does not refer to a living being, an entity. Cow refers to the concept of cow. So we have to understand cow as that which is not cow. Double negation. Not cow is cow.
Not non-cow.
Huh?
Not non-cow.
It is all naming. It is all no. So
apoha.
It is nominal. We call it as nominalism. So we do not have therefore any play of language directly representing reality. But since these concepts are derived out of precepts, therefore they help us. So artha kriya karitva, usefulness, utility is the criterion of reality. If anything is real, it must be useful. And if it is useful, then it must be employed for the betterment of our living. DIGNÄGA is unique. He was Satish Chandra Vidyabhushan in his History of Indian Logic describes him as father of medieval Indian logic. This is the caption which I have also used because it was he who gave us a formal system of logic, a formal system of linguistics. Because logic and language do not directly deal with reality. They deal with reality through respective concepts only. DIGNÄGA therefore pointed out that we must analyze both pratyaksha as well as anumana in a formal manner. In pratyaksha, he points out that we should know the reality as it is. Yatha bhuta jnana. But generally it so happens that sometimes we go astray and we receive wrong sensations. DIGNÄGA analyzes different types of wrong sensations. Say, for example, in a bucket full with water, we put a stick. Stick is straight, but it appears curved. You are seated in one particular train. Another train by your side is moving, but you transfer that movement from there to your own train, etc. So there are cases of illusory sensations, and we have therefore to be careful of that. And this analysis of Bhranti, illusion, has been analyzed by his successor Dharmakirti in great detail. Well, this is this analysis of illusion is something which is very important in Buddhist theory of have this natural, you can say, tendency to go astray, to mistake. And therefore, and then it is no longer a pramana. A pramana is that which enables us to know the reality as it is. But sometimes we fail to do so. That's why there is a need for epistemology, theory of knowledge. Had all our sensations been true, there would have been no need for epistemology. So since there is a possibility of going astray, there is a need for examination of our sensations. Pursuit of knowledge is important, but analysis of error is also equally important. Error has to be warded off, and therefore we must analyze as to whether the sensations do represent the reality or they do not represent the reality. Same is the case with the anumana. In anumana also, we have to see to it that the anumana represents the reality through perception, not directly, of course. So in anumana, we have different elements, and every element may be erroneous in its nature. So, say, for example, there are three important elements in anumana. Technically, we call them as paksha, hetu, and sadhya. That which is to be inferred is sadhya. That through which it is to be inferred is paksha. And that which enables us to infer, undertake inference, is hetu. So hetu is the reason, sadhya is the goal, and paksha is the location where the sadhya is inferred. So we say there is a fire on the mountain, then mountain is paksha, fire is the sadhya, and smoke becomes the hetu or linga. Now, all the three elements may be wrongly conceived, and therefore there may be fallacies. There may be fallacies of paksha, fallacies of hetu, fallacies of sadhya, and therefore we have to be careful about that. DIGNÄGA has given a very formal system of, you can say, inference in a small tract called Hetu Chakra Damru. It's a small tract. He points out that there can be 9 types of relations between, say, Hetu and sadhya. And out of these, only 3 are valid, and the rest 6 are not valid. It's a formal schema which is there. I have discussed it in my book on Buddhist epistemology in detail. I need not discuss it here. The point, therefore, is that we, in the inference, consists of 3 steps. We call it as Trairupya Linga, 3 steps. First is, in that example, we say that there is hill. Then we say, on hill there is fire. And then we say that there is fire because there is a smoke visible. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire. So these are the 3 steps, and we call technically them as Trairupya Linga. So these three steps are important in the process of inference, and inference is very much useful for all our acquisition of knowledge. Of course, perception is there, because without perception we cannot go ahead. But out of perception, inference is formed, and it is inference which is to be made use of. And this inference is again, according to DIGNAGA, of two types. One is Swarthanumana and the other is Pararthanumana. Inference for one's own sake and inference for sake of others. So, for inference for one's own sake means for our own purpose, so that we can have a betterment of our own living. And we have to communicate knowledge. And when we communicate knowledge, then we have to use Pararthanumana. Swarthanumana is non-linguistic, but Pararthanumana has to be linguistic in nature. We have to make use of language to communicate. But there we have to be very careful and that there is no fallacy involved. There is another text by DIGNAGA wherein he says, in the beginning itself, sadhanam dushanam chaiva sabhasam tu parasamvide pratyaksham anumanam cha sabhasam tu atmasamvide. For one's own knowledge, atmasamvid, we have to depend upon anupratyaksha and anumana, but we have to take into account, we have to be careful that there should not be any pratyaksha bhas, fallacious perception. There should not be any anumana bhas. Pratyaksham anumanam cha sabhasam. This word sabhas means fallacy. And when we are to communicate, argue with others, then say sadhanam dushanam chaiva sabhasam. Sadhana means pratyaksha as it is used, anumana as it is used. They are the two sadhana. They are the two means. But there should be no abhas, no fallacy. Dushana. Well, there may be someone, when we are communicating with others, someone may point out some fallacy in our presentation. That is known as dushana. But it should be really fallacy, not a semblance of fallacy. So abhas. It should be dushana and should not be dushana bhas. This is how a communication to others is to be made. This is the technique of acquiring knowledge, and this particular technique is employed very effectively in debate in the Buddhist tradition, particularly in the Tibetan tradition. When there is examination for a particular candidate, and then the candidate is required to undertake this sort of debate. What is the name of debate that you have for that? By clapping.
Sapa. It's called Sapa.
So there, Dushana and Dushana Bhas are they play a very important role. The point, therefore, is that it goes to the credit of DIGNAGA to give us a formal system of epistemology, different from the non-formal one propounded by Naiyayikas. And this was needed because of the Anatmavad tradition. Had there been no Anatmavad tradition, this formal epistemology was not required. The epistemology of Gautam would have been all right. In other schools of thought, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, they are Atmavad traditions, and therefore they follow the Gautamiya tradition. But in Buddhism we have altogether radically different tradition, a formal system, just like in the West also, logic is formal. Jokingly we say in the West that all men are four-legged. Ram is a man, and therefore Ram is four-legged. And it's a valid syllogism in the West. Of course, they don't take truth into consideration, only the validity aspect. In Dinag, we have that form, but Dinag is very particular. And this is how Dinag differs from the Western formal logic, that the premises that you are taking must be true. They must be derived from pratyaksha. It is so you must have smoke, and then you conceptualize smoke. You must have the knowledge of the relation between smoke and fire based on your previous perceptual experience, and therefore you can infer fire. So it is formal in a very unique sense. Here truth is also taken into account along with validity, and this is how Dinag's schema of logic differs from the Aristotelian or any other system of the West. I would therefore say that contribution of Dinag has been tremendous, and that's why he is regarded as father of medieval Indian logic. There has been fierce debate between Naiyayikas and the Buddhists. And the Buddhist arguments made Naiyayikas to revise their position. Likewise, the Nyaya thinkers also made the Buddhists to revise the position. And this is how there has been development both in the Nyaya circle and also in the Buddhist circle. We have, for example, Dinag, and then his disciple Dharmakirti. The two follow the same tradition, yet there is development in Dharmakirti. Say, for example, Pratyaksham Kalpana Podham is Dinag's definition, but Dharmakirti adds Pratyaksham Kalpana Podham Abhrantam, non-erroneous. So there is a development. Similarly, in case of Anumana, Dinag has given a schema. Dharmakirti has applied that schema to understand the nature of reality, and therefore we have application of it. Whatever Dinag and Dharmakirti have said, well, same has been further expanded and elaborated by Shantarakshit and Kamalshila. It's not that they are merely not repeating, they are debating. So in Tattva Sangraha, we have debate with other systems and defense of the Buddhist position. They are very able defense of Buddhist position we find in Tattva Sangraha. Then later on, we have a smaller text by Ratnakirti. Ratnakirti on Apoha, for example, he has written a small text called Apoha Siddhi. And there he has discussed the details of Apoha. Kshanabhanga Siddhi, defense of momentariness, and so forth. We had Jnanashri Mitra, further developing the Buddhist thought. Unfortunately, thereafter, the development of Buddhist thought in India has come to an end. But it continued in Tibet. And we have, therefore, good literature available in Tibetan language. It is being restored gradually. And in Sarnath, the Tibetan Institute is doing some very good work. But it is a stupendous task to be undertaken. And it is a English knowing or Hindi knowing Tibetan scholars who should undertake this particular task, restoring. Because the lost literature in India is available in Tibet, and it should be restored. And new development. This new development should be there by the Indian scholars also, because knowledge is never static, and therefore we must have a newer and newer apprehension of reality. And I hope that dialogues like this will help us to understand better, particularly dialogue with the scientists also. The quantum scientists will be helpful, because the analysis of consciousness that we have in the Buddhist tradition, it is something which should attract the modern quantum scientists as well. And we have a scientist here, so we hope that he will throw some light on that. In Abhidhammat Sangho, we have a concept of called Chitta Vithi, the path of consciousness, and different stages through which consciousness passes to apprehend the reality. So those stages need scientific analysis, and how consciousness, because consciousness in the Atovat tradition is permanent. It does not take birth, does not come to an end. But in the Buddhist tradition, consciousness comes and it gets stopped. Not annihilated, but gets stopped. So, what is how there is rise of consciousness and how there is a stoppage of consciousness. So that process needs to be properly studied and analyzed. Thank you very much for inviting me and asking me to say a few words. And I am grateful to you for organizing this particular dialogue, which is needed also. Thank you.
Professor Bhatt, thank you so much. Thanks don't seem adequate for what you've done for us right now. Take us through this sweeping survey, locating Dignaga in the larger Indian philosophical tradition, making very apt connections with the Western logical tradition, and opening up the conversation with the scientists, which we have scheduled for tomorrow. Would you be able to take a few questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the floor is now open. There are no questions online that I can see. So anyone present here would like to ask Professor Bhatt? We were merely scratching the surface of his wide and deep understanding. That's very clear. So I'm sure we're all bubbling with, or perhaps intimidated by the range of your scholarship. But if there are any immediate questions, please do. Yeah.
Online.
Thanks so much for the lovely talk.
Please use your mic.
Okay, sorry. Thanks so much for the lovely talk. I think I learned a lot. Yeah. So I think I just had a couple of questions. So I think while you touched on the fact that DIGNAG did make certain discussion between, there was certain inductivity that was built into the kind of logic that DIGNAG did because based on past experience, right? Was there a finer classification of what is a valid experience based on the past induction, like the past experience, and what is the not a valid deduction that's based on the what induction that can be based on that within the DIGNAG's tradition? So that was one. And the second thing was, I think, something that's kind of been very curious, which I was wondering if you could kind of throw light on, is that DIGNAG rejects analogy or argument by Upamana, right? So what did he actually kind of elaborate on that, or does he have any concrete examples of why, which was not there in the Nyaya tradition? And we can see that why perhaps it's a fallacious tradition, but what kind of examples did he have in mind when he was rejecting that? And the last question was when we really think about reality as eternal and unchanging, eternal and constantly changing, like in the Buddhist tradition, formalism has this tendency to freeze, because when we try to make something formal, we are actually freezing it in time and saying that these are the eternal laws in some sense, right? So what, is there a contradiction that is there, or how is that contradiction resolved? So yeah, those are the three questions.
What is your first question?
The first question was about induction. So when DIGNAG talks about induction, like so for instance, where there is smoke, there is fire, right? When we, based on past experience, does he have a finer criteria for that as well? Because even that can be misleading. So yeah.
In inductive process, from particulars, we pass on to the universal. And we technically call it as inductive leap. From many similar instances, we formulate a universal rule. This process has been accepted by the Naiyayikas and also by the Buddhists. But we have to take care of this, that according to Buddhists, at the perceptual level itself, we have to see to it that our inductive generalization is correct. Perceptual level itself. This is the Buddhist position. Perceptual level itself. If we go wrong at the initial stage, then at the final stage also we shall be vitiated by wrong. So, but in the case of Naiyayikas, we have in inductive, there should be repeated observation. Again and again we have to make this sort of experiment. Technically it is known as Bhuyo Darshana. So repeated observation, Naiyayikas insist on. Another thing, in Buddhist tradition, since at the level of inference, we are concerned with concepts, not with percepts. Well, you can have an end of doubting. That you can have a removal of doubting in the Buddhist logic. In case of Naiyayikas, since it is non-formal, you cannot have complete removal, you can have just elimination for the present. So this sort of distinction is there between the two inductive processes in the Nyaya and the Buddhist tradition.
There is an online question that has come in. It's from Tenzin Minki of BHU. Respected Dr. Bhatt, kindly describe more on conceptual reality and how perceptual reality formulates the conceptual reality.
See, perceptual reality, perceptual cognition is of the reality. The fleeting reality, reality which is in flux. Now this perceptual cognition apprehends the reality as it is, directly. And here comes the role of mind. It is through mind that our senses function. And therefore, technically what we call something called manasa pratyaksha. It is the mind which receives the sensation, formulates the sensation, analyzes the sensation, and therefore a role of mind is there at the perceptual level. Had there been no mind, we have the prerogative of having a mind, but this bottle doesn't have. So I can receive sensations, the bottle cannot receive sensations. So role of mind is very much important in a cognitive process. This is what we have in perception. And we do have analysis of pratyaksha in DIGNAGA, in Dharmakirti. They follow, in fact, the Sotrantic Yogachar tradition. And according to this, there are two types of reals. One is the chitta and the bhuta. Chitta means the mind or consciousness, bhuta is the reality. So, you can say dualism is there. It is the function of a chitta to cognize the bhuta. And the bhuta is cognized by chitta, so that we can have a utilization of reality. Ultimate aim is utilization of reality. Bhuta. Bhuta is something which results into bhautika, and the bhautik is to be made use of. Chitta is functioning through chaitasika, and there are different types of chaitasikas through which the bhautikas are apprehended and made use of.
Thank you. I think we have Joya ji and then... Okay, yeah. Please do wear your mask, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Professor Bhatt, yeah, here.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we are talking about humor minds and perception and conception. Is it same in animals also?
Animals, yeah.
Yeah.
Animals, there has not been much experiments on animals by the Buddhist thinkers, but they do have a semblance of it. But in our case, we have the critical awareness. That critical awareness perhaps they might not have in full, and therefore, but they do have sensations. And based on sensations, they do have conception. They have conception as to what is eatable, what is not eatable, what is drinkable, what is not drinkable. So all this is there. They do have mind, therefore, and functioning of the mind. And I think this is what we can infer. In fact, we can go a step further. Even vegetation, they also have this capacity to discriminate. So that is there.
I think Joya ji has raised her hand earlier, and then you, sir.
Well,
Professor,
Could you please let the lady speak first?
Professor Bhattji, you said how you explained how Dharmakirti had developed certain concepts that Dignaga produced. So I didn't quite get that thing about Bhranti. That why didn't Dignaga also take into account the possibility of Bhranti?
Perhaps because Dharmakirti did not thought that when we say pratyaksham kalpana podham, then I think they should take care of Bhranti. This is what he thought. But Dharmakirti said, and he said on the basis of criticism of the Naiyayikas, that it should be non-erroneous as well. Not merely free from conceptualization, but free from all erroneous apprehensions. So, more clarity, you can say, than Dharmakirti offered. Did not differ from Dignaga, but more elaboration we have. Same is the case with Anumana. The Terupalian concept that Dignaga propounded, and Dharmakirti expounded it further. So you can say there is more elaboration, and the elaboration is caused by debate with the Naiyayikas. This is how philosophical knowledge developed in India at that time.
We are running 40 minutes behind time. So if questions can be held, they should be. But if you have a very desperate need to be answered, please do quickly ask. Yeah.
Well, perhaps you use the term soulmate and soul-led. Can you throw some light on that?
Which one?
Soulmate and soul-led.
I never use the word soulmate.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I only have a brief
Yeah, okay.
question about, okay.
Since this is a dialogue between scientists and philosophers, we can't let the scientists go here.
No, I just wanted to thank you very much for a beautiful talk, very nice review of Dignaga's logic system, formal logic system. And yes, I will touch upon some bit of the question of consciousness and observation in quantum mechanics. So this is something I will probably talk towards the end of my lecture tomorrow. I had a very, very quick question. Maybe if you can just give me a quick answer to it. You were saying that in the what you call the Swartha Anumana thing, it is non-linguistic. But Anumana being acting in the conceptual domain, I was wondering, you always have in some sense a linguistic tag in there. Isn't that right? I mean, how is it non-linguistic in that case?
Dignaga says that when we are acquiring knowledge for our own sake, language is not needed. We can have a direct apprehension of reality through perception. But when we are arguing with others, then there has to be some means of communication. And language is the only tool available to us. And therefore, it is Pararthanuman is always necessarily linguistic. But then, he cautions us that language does not directly refer to reality, only it refers to the concept, and through concept you may go to reality. So this double negation is only with regard, is a play of concepts, not concept vis-a-vis reality. It is concept vis-a-vis concept. This is what is. Theory of Apo is very built into Pararthanuman.
So I think Pratyaksh, the clock ahead tells me that we are really behind time. Thank you so much, Professor Bhatt, for your patience, for answering all the questions and for your wonderful overview. we hope to have you with us tomorrow to continue the conversation, because
These
I think
days I don't keep very good health.
because I think we've just sort of scratched the surface,
And,
really.
I don't travel alone. I have to take help of someone. But my old friend told me to come and participate. I think you contacted me about 2 months back.
Yeah.
Therefore, I thought I should come and
You
participate.
have to go now?
Huh?
You have to go now?
Yeah, after I want to. What is your presentation? Next is yours?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
I just listened to him and then, should I go? Sure. In that case, I would like to go.
Okay, so let me sort of launch straight into introducing our next speaker. If Professor Bhatt gave us an overview from within the discipline of philosophy as it's taught in the modern university, our next speaker comes from within the monastic tradition, the Tibetan monastic tradition. Very happy to have with us Geshe Yeshe Lungpa, who was trained in the classical Tibetan tradition at the Drepung Lozeling Monastic University in Karnataka. He's been there since 1975. Under the guidance of many great scholars, he has studied and practiced 5 major subjects of the Buddhist curriculum, culminating in receiving the Geshe Larampa degree in 1995. That's like a PhD in the monastic tradition. He then joined the Gyuto Tantric Monastic University, continuing his study and practice of Buddhist Tantric vehicle, and received the recognition of Mastery in Tantrayana in 2005. Since 1998, he has formally been teaching Buddhism at the Drepung Lozeling Monastic University and has had many opportunities for presenting papers in national and international seminars on Buddhism. So this is, a gift of the Tibetan diaspora to us, that we have, learned geshes with us. So we'll be moving into a very specific, very technically intricate engagement with DIGNAGA now. So over to you, Geshe-la.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good evening. I also would like to say my heartfelt gratitude and thankfulness to Most Venerable, His Eminence Dompo Rinpoche, for making this wonderful event to happen. So I'm looking forward to very candid exchange between scientific members of the community and person like me, representing monastic universities. Okay, so coming to my topic. My topic is Acharya Dignaga and his contribution to understanding non-deceptive cognition. So I'm going to point out my theme in terms of 3 categories or 3 pieces. Okay, the first one is the fruit of generating prime cognition. Okay, and then the second one is the nature of prime cognition. and then the divisions or categories of prime cognition. Okay, so these are the how to say the summary of my paper. Okay, so the first, I think that it's very important for us to know the fruit of generating valid cognition. Okay, and then once you know, okay, the fruit of generating valid cognition, then you would naturally aspire to achieve a genuine prime cognition. Okay, so therefore you would, pursue you would pursue, I think, a right method for generating prime cognition, and not only that, but also, by doing so, you will also, achieve all the fruits which are interrupted, whether it is interrupted or uninterrupted results. Okay, so here when I'm talking about the fruit of prime cognition, okay, it should be understood in terms of two categories. The one is, we normally call it, okay, or just, this is the term used by DIGNÄGA as well as Dharmakirti, and also followers of his, followers of these two great scholars. Now, the two results. The first, the one is uninterrupted result. The other one is interrupted result. Okay, the interrupted result would be, in Buddhist sense, okay, would be abandoning all levels of suffering, and also eradicating the causes of all levels of suffering. Okay, and naturally it also involves, nurturing or developing a path to nirvana. The nirvana here means, okay, nirvana should be understood as a cessation of afflicted emotions. Okay, so this is the this is the these are instances of interrupted result of valid cognition. Okay, so for instance, okay, if one understands the suffering, okay, the nature of suffering on all levels, okay, the gross level and mid-auger level and the subtle level, okay, then it naturally opens door to oneself to investigate whether such and such different levels of suffering has causes or conditions, or they do not have any causes and conditions. Okay, so if they don't have any causes and conditions, then it would be very absurd. Absurd. It is contradictory with the reality, and so therefore, I think contradictory with reality. See, if it arises at one time, it would have to arise all the time. If it does not arise at one particular time, it would have to follow that it would not arise at any time. Okay, so therefore, every kind of suffering, be it on the level of subtle, every level of the subtlety of, every level of the subtlety of suffering must be caused and conditions, okay. So therefore, when you, naturally investigate, therefore, you naturally, you instinctively or voluntarily investigate I think, as to which are the causes, and if there are only one cause, or there are many causes, or as to the principal causes and also conditions. Okay, so therefore, okay. In the end, I think I would not elaborate on this in detail. It will take too much time. I think in the end, you will certainly come to ascertain that the ignorance, grasping at the inherent existence of self and phenomena, is the real or the principal or root cause of all these, miserable experiences. Okay, so then you will investigate. Okay, all of this, the process of this investigation, involves, okay, prime cognition. Okay, without involvement or without generating any kind of prime cognition, you would not come to conclude, or you would not be able to be certain, okay, that that the existence of the subtle levels of suffering and their root causes, okay, root causes, I think, such as innate notion of inherent existence. Okay, so these are very crucial. I think. This shows it is very crucially important for all of us to generate, generate prime cognition in order to alleviate misery. Not only just develop knowledge, but mainly to alleviate and mitigate, and eventually to get rid of all suffering once and for all. Okay, so this is the one type of result of generating prime cognition. Now the second type is uninterrupted result. Okay, so here this is a terminology just given. Okay, in order to understand that it is not actually, technically speaking, very technically speaking, this uninterrupted result of valid cognition is not actually a result of valid cognition. Okay, because the cause and effect must be in temporal sequence. So therefore, the term here, therefore, in uninterrupted result is termed as a result of valid cognition for the purpose, of knowing that, to know or to ascertain or to deeply know something, or to ascertain something is established by valid cognition. And in this case, okay, when we say the valid cognition establishes knowing principal object or ascertaining its principal object, okay, means should be construed that here, okay, when we define prime cognition, the prime cognition is defined as, I think, see here, a newly incontrovertible perception, okay. So therefore, in the definition, we put perception, okay. Here, why we put perception as the part of the definition is that perception here is that it should be a consciousness, okay. It must not refer to any physicality, okay. So here, perception, okay. So when we're talking about perception, okay. So see the appearance of the object, okay. Once, for instance, okay, when eye consciousness, let's consider eye consciousness, okay. So with eye consciousness, we see a form, okay. How we see things with our eye consciousness, okay. That is the question, okay. So here, the aspect or the image of the object, or appearance of the object, or reflection of the object, okay. These are all the same. So the reflection of the object, how to say, I think reflection of the object, I think reflection of the object arises, okay, in the consciousness, okay, and that very consciousness also experiences that reflection. So therefore, or thus, I think, thus the mechanism, or I think the process, okay, the process of knowing is established, okay. See, for instance, I think any physical, okay, matter, okay, when we think about, for instance, eye faculty, ear faculty, and nose faculty, or tongue faculty, and body faculties, okay. All of these are not perceptions, okay, because they do not perceive anything. Why? How they don't perceive? Okay, eye sense faculty does not perceive anything, but it functions as an empowering condition for eye consciousness to grasp form, okay? So this is, I think, one of the most important thing especially, I think, for the scientists, I think, neuroscientists or quantum mechanics, the scientists who are well versed in quantum mechanics. I think this is very interesting topic to digest, I think. Okay, now I hope I made it a little bit clear, okay. So so ancient Indian religious practitioners from various traditions, I think, discussed at great length the topic of prime cognition, or reliable cognitions, pramana. Okay, DIGNÄGA, one of the foremost Buddhist sages in India, involved in debating the topic of reliable cognitions with non-Buddhists, and in setting up the system of logic and epistemology that has been studied by Tibetan monastics to this day. These topics are studied not just for the sake of philosophical knowledge or out of interest in abstract theory, but for the purpose of fulfilling human aspirations, particularly nirvana, and omniscience. Dharmakirti said in his Brahmana Vartika, Karika, in Tibetan we say, Mindu lo ni sabani, landa tujin, jula tujin, yunam jin, lo yito otash, deyunan di yueshiro, okay. So I translate this. Brahmana is assigned as a cognition because it is the principal factor for engaging oneself, okay, either in cultivating or abandoning things that which is to be cultivated and that which is to be abandoned. It is tenable to have differing knowings that are of awareness because cognitive images of the object are diverse. Okay, this is the real point. Okay, I think in the monastic universities, students are first introduced to the topic of reliable cognition, known as awareness and perception, Lurik in Tibetan, which is taught from the Sautrantika perspective. In Brahmana Samudchaya, DIGNÄGA set forth distinct nature of prime cognition and how it been subsumed under direct prime cognition and inferential prime cognition, as well as their results. Okay. Having delineated Brahmana Samudchaya has been greatly helpful for truth-seeking individuals to initially know the nature of incontrovertible cognition correctly. Thus, by studying and contemplating meanings of such treatises, one can discover the true types of prime cognitions, their modes of engagement or their modes of apprehension and characteristics. As a result, the attainability of liberation from psychic existence and of future conducive rebirth can be ascertained. So here, the first nature of Brahmana. According to Sautrantika, the definition of a prime cognition is a newly incontrovertible perception. Okay. Incontrovertible perception is the definition of prime cognition. Now, key to definition. So here, the newly, okay, the first piece is newly. Newly is put as part of the definition because every prime cognition must be only the first moment of certain type of consciousness, okay? Or the first moment of the consciousness over here. The first moment of non-deceptive consciousness would be better. First moment of non-deceptive consciousness. Incontrovertible, because incontrovertible refers to certain about the principal object that it perceives. The last piece is perception. Okay, perception here just means to be clear and perceiver. Okay, or perceiving its object. Okay, no. So here, clear means clear in a way. How to say? Indicates that it is non-physical thing, or it is not atomically structured. The term, okay, so therefore the term perception refers to a consciousness. Okay. The reason to include in the definition, okay, newly is to exclude subsequent cognitions as prime cognitions. Incontrovertible is to exclude correct assumptions, awareness through which the object appears without being ascertained, doubt and wrong consciousness as prime cognitions. Now, perception is to exclude, okay, physical sense faculties as prime cognitions. So within the Buddhist school, within the Buddhist school systems, or there are some proponents of among the Buddhist schools. There are some suggest the Vaibhashika asserts a common basis between physical sense faculties and pramana. Okay, so for instance, they assert that sense faculties are pramana, or else they are, pramana, or they are objective, which is non-deceptive with regard to its principal object. DIGNÄGA, who wrote from the Sotantrika or Chidamadan viewpoint, and Chandrakirti, who taught from the Prasangika viewpoint, took the meaning of Sanskrit term pramana differently. Pra in pramana semantically conveys many meanings such as first, man, and also complete, or complete, and so forth. Mana means mind, or sometimes to cognize. So according to DIGNÄGA, pramana refers to a new and non-deceptive perception. Pra indicates that it is the first moment of non-deceptive mind or consciousness. The subsequent moments in the continuity of mind knowing the same object are subsequent cognizers and are not pramana. The Prasangika proponents of entity-lessness has taken man as the meaning of pra. According to Chandrakirti, pramana is defined as a cognition that is non-deceptive with respect to its principal object, and therefore subsequent non-deceptive cognitions are pramana, because all of the non-deceptive cognitions are conventionally known as pramana. So that is the ultimate reason. Or all other Buddhist tenets take first to be the meaning of pra in pramana. The Tibetan term miluerikpa in Tibetan, or we say miluerikpa. Tibetan term miluerikpa means literally non-deceptive perception, but it can be translated as incontrovertible perception. In both Sotantrika and Prasangika systems, non-deceptive does not refer to a mere lack of deception, nor to any other deceptive consciousness. It means being free from deception, having eliminated doubt and wrong perception with regard to the main object of pramana. And it also implies to be trustworthy and knowing its principal object correctly. Okay, I think we can omit in dealing with it. Just doesn't fit here. Okay. Okay. Now the result of pramana. Okay. With respect to the result of prime cognition, there are two categories of result. As I said earlier, one is interrupted and the other is uninterrupted. I think again here some mistyping. Okay. One is interrupted and the other is uninterrupted. Okay. The interrupted result in the prime cognition are in temporal sequence and are not simultaneous with each other. For instance, a cure from certain disease is an interrupted result of prime cognition that knows such and such a medication has the ability to cure the disease. Okay. Uninterrupted result is simultaneous with the prime cognition. For instance, knowing myself as impermanent is an uninterrupted result of prime cognition, which knows myself being impermanent and to which impermanence appears. So this is very important, to which impermanence appears. Appearance is very important. Without having any kind of appearance, nothing can be understood or known. DIGNÄGA says in Pramana Samuchaya, because awareness of object to which object appears is a prime cognition and knowing the object is the result. Okay, so result. There's no there's no, okay, there's no result different from that, okay. There's no, there's no result different, I think. Differently, I think, different entity, I think. There's no result that is different entity from that, the prime cognition, okay. Ascertainment of the object as being the result of prime cognition means prime cognition establishes the knowing of its main object by retaining the reflection or image of object, and also knowing the main object is established by the prime cognition. Therefore, prime cognition and its knowing main object are same entity, although they are different isolates or different reverses. So this is, okay. Each end, every prime cognition is assigned as a cognitive agent having reflection, image of, and certain kind of object. This in turn shows, I think, consciousness and physical form are mutually exclusive because no physical matter has an aspect or object. Okay. The most important point is that once the aspect or object as being a unique feature of consciousness is ascertained, beginningless and endless continuity of mind can be ascertained, and again based on this, compositional action and their results, as well as past and future lives can be proven. So this whole system of cycle existence and nirvana, as well as means for achieving it, can be proven and ascertained. So now the third one, divisions of, okay. Okay. I mean, this is, the whole system of cycle existence and nirvana, as well as means for achieving it, can be proven and also ascertained. Now, divisions of prime cognition. Direct prime cognition, okay. Inferential prime cognition. Direct prime cognition, okay, now the definition of a direct prime cognition is a newly incontrovertible perception free from conception. How are all the prime cognitions subsumed under twofold cognitions, as has been indicated in Pramana Samachaya, based on having only two different kinds of, I think, object in the object of knowledge. Every prime cognition, I think, must be one of the two prime cognitions. There's some misspellings, okay, mistyping, okay. This means prime cognitions are of two types due to having only two appearing objects. Okay, appearing objects is very important. Appearing objects. It does not, I think, refer to only things that appear to, conceptual consciousness or non-conceptual consciousness. Rather, it has further meaning. Okay. For instance, okay, the conception of myself, or conceptual consciousness that apprehend myself has appearing object. Okay. in this, okay. 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 I think, okay. Time is running out. Okay. I think, okay. So, okay. Appearing object. So this is a little bit tough. It needs to be described more profound, a little bit more or maybe more profoundly, depending on how much you want to know. Okay. So, okay, I think I'm going to end somewhere here, okay? There's no particular ending point for me, okay? Because from the beginning, yes, I have been traveling, and also I will travel endlessly. Yeah, okay, so, okay, this means that prime cognitions are of two types, due to having only two appearing objects, particular and general entities, or it can be translated as specifically characterized phenomena and generally characterized phenomena. Okay. I think I will stop here. If
We can go on, the 10 minutes still there.
okay.
Please do finish, like wrap up if you can.
Oh, I see. I didn't see that one. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, talking on, appearing object. See, there are two different kinds of consciousness. The one is impartial, the mind of impartial engagement, and the mind of complete engagement. Mind of impartial engagement and mind of complete engagement, or mind of impartial, mind of mind of partial idea, mind of and also two different types. Yeah, somewhere here. Yeah, I think, okay, so partial, okay, mind of partial engagement and mind of complete engagement. So the non-conceptual, all non-conceptual consciousness are regarded as consciousness of full engagement or complete engagement, and whereas conceptual consciousness are regarded as consciousness of partial engagement. Okay, so because I need to elaborate on this. For instance, when we say perception, all consciousness are regarded as perceptions. Within the perception, there are two types: direct perception. Okay, direct perceptions means that it does not. Direct perceptions is that it does not rely on meaning generality or sound generality, and directly engages in its principal object. Whereas all conceptual thoughts or conceptual consciousness are conceptual consciousness engage in their respective principal object through the imputed conceptual image of principal object. And also you can also, there's also another way to understand this more clearly. We say, when it engages in its principal object, it engages in its principal, regarding the conceptual consciousness, whatever conceptual consciousness, regarding every conceptual consciousness, when regarding conceptual consciousness, whenever there engages their principal object, they engage in their principal object by way of negating, not being, negating the object that need to be negated. In this, that need to be negated for this particular process or procedure to occur. And
Question? Do we have a question?
Not yet, but if we have any, that might actually be a good way for you to. Yeah, or actually we can have the second presentation and we can take questions together. Would you
okay.
say that you're, I mean, there is no end to this conversation, as you said.
No. Whole life, you can spend whole life.
So you have to call an arbitrary end to this.
Every time you will know something new. So I have been spending my whole life. So I'm also learning each day. So it's very interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, for trying to give us a taste of the kind of intricacies into which the traditional Tibetan monastic education goes, and for translating it, because you're working with so many languages. There's Sanskrit terminology, then the Tibetan versions, and then you're speaking in English. All of this is a very complex process. And in monastic universities, it takes hours and days of, debate. So it's very unfair to force you to have to encapsulate it in, this really short space. So with that, I'll move on to our next speaker, Dr. Pempa Dorji. He's going to be speaking on DIGNÄGA'S Mangalacharan, the compendium of Buddhist thoughts. Dr. Dorji comes to us from a very interesting, again, hybrid tradition, shall I say, because he received his Acharya degree from the Sampurnananda Sanskrit University in Varanasi, and his PhD degree from the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies at Sarnath, on his thesis on the Samye debate tradition. He holds a graduate degree from the University of Northern Iowa in educational technology. He has 17 books to his name as author, translator, editor, and co-editor. And he retired as professor at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies. Some of his latest books are as follows. One is on Acharya Atisha. I'm not going to give you the very long names. One very complex text on by Acharya Atisha. A book on Serra Monastery, co-authored with Professor Jose Cabazon, the University of California. And a book on the Guhya Samaja Tantra, co-edited, translated with Professor Bentor of Jerusalem University. So he brings a wide variety of engagements to his talk on DIGNÄGA'S, and it's going to be very textual from what I can gather. The Sarnath Institute specializes in classical languages and competence in them and very close textual engagement. So thank you, Professor Dorji. Please go and take the mic. Would you like to use this one?
I can use this one, I think. I'll sit here.
You could just move that mic.
Yeah, it's okay. It's much better for me. It's okay now. Okay. Thank you very much, Mayaji. First of all, I would like to thank most respected the Rinpoche for showing confidence in me. I can't say no to him because throughout my career, he was always guided me and helped me a lot during my whole career. And when Rinpoche called me first, I'm sorry that my English is not that good. My English में थोड़ा पैदल हूँ, sorry. So if I made some mistake, please bear with me. And when Rinpoche called me, first he told me that I have to do some translation to a professor. And I thought, it's okay, I can do that. But and then the very next sentence he said, you have to also say something. Then it's kind of difficult for me to say no, but also very difficult to accept something that I have to say on the Dignaga. So, but I think I don't have much to offer to this August gathering, but my topic of this presentation is a little bit shifted from the system of the Pramana, but I just try to say something on the very first words of Dignaga. That is when he wrote Pramana Samujaya. So he wrote this Mangalacharana, or the supplication words. So based on that, my presentation would be more like a traditional way, not so much to the technical points of the Pramana, divisions, all those things. I must be honest that it's a very difficult subject, and I cannot actually go through, and I even don't know much about that one. So begin with this Mangalacharana, or the Pramana Samujaya. Taranatha wrote that when Acharya Dignaga was meditating on a retreat in the hills of the Odivisha right now, or Orissa, or Odivisha in the ancient days. So he wrote this Mangalacharan on the rock of his cave, outside of his cave, and he went for begging in the village. So when he came back, he saw that his whatever he's written on the cave was erased. So he did this incident took for several times, and then at the end he said that he thought he should write something below, that if someone is just erasing this important verse just to tease, then please don't do that, because it has a great purpose. But if you see something, some error or mistake in this verse, then please show up. We will discuss on this one. So this is a long story actually, but in short, the ascetic called Drujay Krishna, so he showed up to Acharya Dignaga, and they have some debate. And according to the Taranatha, he said that he could not defeat Acharya Dignaga in debate, but through the magical power, he just burned the cloth of Acharya Dignaga. So Acharya Dignaga was so depressed with this, and whatever he written, he just threw it on the sky. And then it says that we believe, actually, Manjushri himself hold that slate and advise him to go ahead with the writing. And Rinpoche also touched a little bit on this during his speech, that this will become the eye of many people in the future. So this is how it. He wrote the story behind this, the supplication of Mangalacharan. And now his supplication actually, he wrote like, Pramana Bhutaya Jagadihiteshni Pranamya Shastri Sukataya Taini. So this is the two line. So on this two line, actually, Acharya Chandrakirti wrote a whole chapter in his Pramana Vartika. So, why he wrote this? Just to explain the Pramana Bhutaya, who is the Pramana Purusha actually. So prove that Buddha as a Pramana Purusha, he wrote. On this very two line, he wrote the whole chapter. So, I should say something, that whatever the Indian Buddhist scholars have written or discussed or analyzed or whatever in their text, or the Buddha, whatever the Buddha teaches, everything is centered on the well-being of sentient beings, to liberate them from the suffering, and that is the real cause behind that. Whether we are talking about some kind of impermanence of the objects or phenomena, or whether we are talking about the interdependency of the objects or the phenomena, or whether we are talking about the shunyata or the emptiness of the phenomena, everything is focused on that. This is what I think. So, when he said that, Pramana Bhutaya, to that person who is a Pramana Purusha, I prostrate to that Purusha, means now how he is a Pramana Purusha, how he became a Pramana Purusha. So for that, why I said the compendium of the Buddhist thought is that to prove that he is a Pramana Purusha, then to become a Pramana Purusha like a Buddha, the whole system of Buddhist practice is incorporated in that one word, I think. If I am mistaken, please correct me, Rinpoche. So I think, so this line actually, when we elucidate or explain in the wider sense, then it actually gives you all how a prince from Kapilavastu went out of his palace and how he practiced the path and how he ended up at Bodh Gaya to become an enlightenment or Buddha. So in this journey of this Pramana, a Pramana Purusha, the whole of the gist of the Buddhist, the practice is incorporated in that word, I think. And so in a traditional, actually, explanation actually on this two line, they used to say that this actually explained the forward process and the reverse process of what do we call it, Anulom and Vilom process of this practice. So I'm not taking too much time because we are already late and you must be tired and be hungry now. So
lunch has been has been delayed a little bit. Yeah. So please do.
But hunger don't delay,
This is Buddhist compassion at work, by the way, and Buddhist pragmatism, which we've been hearing about since morning.
So, yeah. So now there is two part of this one. One is the wisdom part, and another one is the practical part. What do you call it? The Upaya Paksha. So these two go in parallel. So here, that why Buddha is a Pramana Purusha? Because he accomplished both of these two wisdom part as well as the Upaya Paksha, or the method, which is kind of karuna and all those things, the practical path. So with that, when he accomplishing these things, what he did is he eliminated all the obscurations and kleshas. And to eliminate the kleshas, one needs to know the nature of the phenomena that I think. So now that, so because of that, we emphasize too much on understanding the impermanence of the phenomena or the objects, as well as the interdependency of the phenomena and selflessness or the emptiness, whatever we call it. So it says, it is considered that if one don't understand the real nature of the object or the phenomena, that cause this suffering. And then because of that, one always suffer in the cyclic existence or the samsara. And so now, one thing he said, so if that is the case, then what kind of Pramanish Purush or the teacher you should be seeking? Who should be a person who can teach you the right path? So one thing the Acharya said, Acharya Dharmakirti in his text said that ज्ञानवान मृगयते कश्चित् तत् उक्त प्रतिपत्ये अज्ञो उपदेश कारणे विप्रलम्भन शंकिभि तस्मात् अनुष्ठेयगतं ज्ञानमस्य विचार्यतां कीट संख्या परिज्ञानम तस्य न को उपजुज्यते. So this is something that what kind of teacher you should be seeking for, what kind of teacher you are looking for, that who can teach you the right path, right things, right ways to get into your goal. So what it says that there are many ignorant teachers who tend to be disguised like they are the right teacher. But an intelligent person should examine the teacher whether by practicing his teaching, whether that will lead to your goal that you are going striving for achieving that. So then it says that what kind of teacher you should be, what should be the quality of the teacher. Then Acharya says that heya upadeya tattvasya sabhyopayasya vedakaha yah pramanam savishto natu sarvasya vedakam duram pashyatu vahama va tattvam ishtam tu pashyatu pramanam durdarshi chet iti gridra anupasmahe. So what he says that a teacher, you should look for a teacher who can teach what should be adopted, what should be adopted, or what should be abandoned, means that's the right path. If you if you say that a teacher, you can say that he knows many things. It's okay, he knows many things, but that cannot be a right teacher for the liberation from the samsara. So right teacher should be something like that, who teach you what should be adopted, what should not be adopted, for the sake of achieving your goal. So that's why the Acharya Dhammakirti tried to prove that Buddha is the Pramana Purusha. Once he proved that Buddha is a Pramana Purusha, then whatever he's teaching is also Pramana. So this is the two related to each other. That's what he wants to say that. And one thing that why we should understand the nature of the object. This is very important. Why we should know the nature of the phenomena, the actual nature of the phenomena. And Buddha said in one of the sutra that I quote here, that is Pita Putra Samagam Sutra, that Buddha's meeting with his father, the king Shuddhodana. So in that sutra, he says that, O great king, he is talking to his father, when an ordinary being who did not have understanding of phenomena, when he sees an object or a form, a rupa, he or she will cling to that object, attach to that object, and from that, attach to the object which makes them feel happy. So once they do that, after clinging to that form or object, they grow attachment toward that particular object or particular thing. And then from that they generate 3 bodily, 4 verbal, and 3 mental non-virtuous actions. So that is the cause, because if you don't understand the real nature of the object or the phenomena, whatever you say, then because of that, it makes you do this kind of, because of clinging to that, attaching to that, then because of that, it will make you generate those unwholesome action. So now, making too short, that why it is important to understand the impermanence of the object. There are a lot of the masters or all the Indian scholars, as well as many scholars, or the Panditas or the Acharyas, they give a lot of reasons, a lot of reasons and a lot of examples that these things are impermanent. Okay, if just we say that it is impermanent and just leave it, doesn't make any, doesn't give any effect to your mind, So why they are telling that why they are just stressing on this, to make us understand why these are impermanence. The impermanence, once you understand the impermanence, from my point of view, that your mental attitude toward that particular object, like an attachment, that will get lesser and lesser and lesser, and you will eliminate that kind of attachment toward that particular object, because you know the actual, the real nature of that that thing. So, to understand this impermanency, Acharya Shantarakshita, he gave a very good example in his text, Madhyamik Alankara, the auto commentary of that Madhyamik Alankara. Although this example is given in a different context, so some kind of illusion or something, but I take this example to understand the real, how do you say it, the momentariness of the phenomena or whatever you say. For example, he said in his text, you stake 100 petals of lotus together, and then you take a sword and just cut it. So when you cut it, we will see that. When you see that it cuts 100 petals of the lotus, just cut in, and then simultaneously we feel that, okay, this is cut simultaneously, just in one hit. But when we examine how it is cut, we should know that the blade of that sword touches every single petal of that 100 lotus petal. So once you see, when it cut, it's something like that, it is cut in just simultaneously. But such a short moment, when you think that how much it took to touch one petal of that in the stake, to cut it. So that is kind of how the time passed by, and this is same to ourselves. We say that, okay, yesterday I am here, tomorrow I'll be there, this morning he is here, this evening also he is here, and we just think that it is something like permanency, what you call it, nityagraha. But in actual way, every single moment we are changing, we are decaying. So it's said that, at the moment you are born, the abiding, birth, abiding, and decaying are simultaneous. So that is what they call it. So this is because if you understand these things, then your mind toward the attachment toward that as a nityagraha. And if it is very close to you, or if you like that particular thing very much, but you have understanding of that, oh, the real nature is something like that, it is momentary, it is anitya, it is impermanent, then naturally, and you practice it in your mind, then you will gradually diminish that kind of slowly the attachment. It becomes weaker and weaker and weaker, and then one time that it comes that you don't feel any kind of frustration or sadness, something that what if something happened to that one. So this is, I think it is important why we are talking about impermanence. There are a lot of technical observations or the analysis of something like that, but the main reason behind what I think is in the Buddhist philosophical thought. So this I took it from that Pramana Bhutaya, this one. And then another one is the wisdom part. So we are talking about all the phenomena, all the things are empty, they are interdependent. But what I am trying to explain in a layperson's perspective, I myself in a kind of layperson in this philosophical text, So when we think about, if we don't go to the deeper point of that interdependency or something, interdependence arising or something like that. But for example, I took it on myself, like, you see, I am kind of a short person. I'm not tall. And that tall is related to, I'm short because someone is taller to me, right? And if someone comes who is a little bit shorter to me, then I'm taller, right? So now what I am, whether I am tall, I'm short, so this is kind of interdependence or relating to each other. There is no inherently existence. For example, another example, if I take it like there is a big, huge mountain. So I'm standing in front of that mountain, which is toward the east. Then I say the mountain is in the west. But when I go behind that mountain, then I say mountain is the east. So now, where is the mountain? So these are the things that, why it is called interdependence, interdependence. So I'm feeling hungry now.
We have 3 questions, so we can move on to that.
Yeah. So I think now I should stop here because I have some more to say, but there's not much time left. And now one thing, that how Buddha, actually Dharmakirti says that how Buddha became. Because he says that sadhanam karuna abhyasad saha. So he practiced compassion. Because of that, compassion is one of the cause to become Buddha. So this compassion, now here comes the question, in that one life or many lives? So he says he practiced that for many lives. So now this expresses that there is a rebirth system here. So in the rebirth process, actually then according to the Buddhist, or the consciousness goes on. As Geshe-la said, I'm coming from the beginningless, I'm going to endless. That is the consciousness, what he is. So this consciousness actually travels continuously. But we don't say, in Buddhism, you don't say that that is nitya. Consciousness is not considered as a nitya, it's not a permanent, but it keeps on changing and flow is there, always flow is there. That is one thing. So, now, there is, so, I'm zero in science, sorry, but in front of you I want to give one example, one kind of, I cannot say this is a story, but this event actually took place in Ladakh. And recently there's one guy who who have a YouTube channel called Ladakh Through Ages. Ladakh Through Ages. So I usually listen to him because he is telling all the events that has took place in the early days, just to make the younger generations understand what happened in Ladakh. And there are some kind of interesting stories, interesting events, not only the events, but also many cultural things, traditions that younger generation should be, cherish upon them. So one day he was telling about women who came back from death. So we in Tibetan, in the Ladakh also, they call it their law. Their law, who returned back from the death. So now, this is something actually you may not believe it, but this guy, he himself talked to that woman who actually came back from, I cannot use that word, resurrection. I don't know whether it is right to use that word or not, but it happens. So he asked the woman, what happened? The actual, when you died. So she explained everything, what happened to him, what happened to herself. So she was there, and she had kind of I don't know whether I can say that a hallucination or something, when she was in the dead bed, she see lots and lots of people are coming in, pouring in her house, and they don't let her to, stay calm. And this way, it's going on and going on and going on and going on. And in short, I'm not going in detail of that, but after that, she heard a sound, and the sound is there's a skin, a fresh skin of a yak just fell on the floor of her room, and she was sitting on that one, naked. And after that, she said, she told this guy that she felt she should go from here, and she just left the room and then went on. And she can see that her body is there on the bed, but she is living. And then, this is kind of mystic story. And then she went on and she went very rough paths, trails. And at the end, she reached a place with the piles of coals, koala. And there are a lot of people, actually, they are boiling something in a very big vessels. But she told this guy that she didn't see anything, what they are actually boiling there. But then she thought, why I am here? I should go back. So then she came back to her. In their house, what actually was doing that they are preparing for her funeral. There are people that are asking what to do, who should be called upon for the monks, for the funeral rituals, everything. And then after some time, when she came back, she entered the room, and the same situation is there with all these kind of people are just jumping over her, and they don't let her to see. And then the family members, they are mourning of her death. But when they are nearby the dead body, then after some time they heard a humming sound, and they could not believe in themselves. And after that, again, and then they could communicate with her. This is how it happened there, but I don't know. This guy who is telling is still alive in Ladakh, and this guy who told or who told this story, after that she lived for like more than 90 years, she said. And there are people who were actually looking after her, still alive. So if scientists wants to examine, they're the people right alive here. They can talk to them. So this is what I want to share with you a little bit. So it's already late. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Doshi, for reminding us about the importance of Buddhist psychology and soteriology. The ontology and the epistemology serve a purpose. This is a repeated point we've been hearing. There are two questions online which I'm going to read out. The first one I think is meant for Geshe-la. It comes from Bangalore, Shafige Lal. The question is, does the mind of a human embryo therefore begin as a mind of complete engagement and evolve into a mind of partial engagement? Now, this sounds like a response to something you said at around 12:45 p.m. And I can guess from the time of the question, because it's... So, can I repeat that? Does the mind of a human embryo begin as a mind of complete engagement and evolve into a mind of partial engagement?
Oh yeah, no. It's yeah. There's no direct relationship between them. Mind of embryo can also boils down into two categories: non-conceptual and conceptual consciousnesses. For instance, during the embryonic procedure, the person, that particular person, we can say, has body consciousness. Okay, even though they do not have eye consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, okay, or ear consciousness. I mean, olfactory consciousness or ear consciousness. They do have mental consciousness, and on top of that, they do have body consciousness. So body consciousness must be consciousness of complete engagement.
Okay. The second question comes from Tenzin Minki from BHU again. Respected professors, do you think there's a relation between our subtle mind and body? If yes, how and also what will be your view on the mind in the formless realm with relation to body, which is not present in the formless realm?
Just that. Between once again, just
sorry?
Yeah.
Are you?
I can't see it.
Should I just repeat the question?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a relation between our subtle mind and body? If there is, what will be your view on the mind in the formless realm in relation to the body? Because the body doesn't exist in the formless realm.
In the formless realm, there is no body, no form at all.
There's subtle body.
Just a subtle body, but that doesn't. It cannot. Not gross one. And as far as this talking about is there any relation between the mind and the body? The body is considered as the abode of the mind or the consciousness. And once you die, then consciousness doesn't stay there. And one thing actually I want to add here, that in our tradition, in the Tibetan tradition as well as in the Himalayan tradition, once a person dies, they don't cremate it immediately. they keep it. First they go to the astrologer for some divination, and according to that, they may be kept for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, even 1 week. So there, it is considered that after the dissolution of all faculties has happened, but the consciousness remains in the body. And as a sign of that, the consciousness has already left the body, then you can see some kind of fluids coming out of your nose or from the genital. And once it happens, then you can consider that the person is already dead. There is no consciousness inside. This is one thing I think. Yeah. So there are a lot of debate that now whether mind and body are like same and no. But here we say it is said that the body is the abode of the and like a tenant of a of a house, something like that.
We have 1 minute left, so if you want to keep mind and body together with good food, we might not want to. But Joya is very keen on asking a question. So
Yeah, no, we've only heard this in English, this Mangalacharanam, which is the basis of the Pramana Siddhi of Dharmakirti. So I was just wondering if Penpadojila could recite it it's only 2 lines, in Sanskrit. If you could recite it in Sanskrit, that Mangalacharanam, teacher, Sugata, etc.
I don't have the whole thing, but I have 2 lines here. I focus only on 2 lines.
2 lines, yeah. Mike.
To go with that, Pramana Bhuta.
No. Pramana Bhutaya. Pramana Bhutaya.
We emphasize the Kurpa, Sama Kurpa.
No.
It's not that
No.
something is already
Yes, got it.
Sama,
No.
Kevu,
No.
but he became Sama Kurpa, right? So it's a grammatical question. Kumara Bhutta is
Bhutaya
Kurpa?
actually not Pramana Bhutaya actually here they use the
Is there, my question is there
Namishiva.
difference between Churpa and Jurva?
Churban. Churba. Deval.
So
No.
what is the Sanskrit word?
Sanskrit Pramana Bhuta.
Kumara Bhutta.
No.
Pramana Bhutta is Samar Churpa.
No.
And
The Bhutaya la Jorwala.
Samayimba, what would
Sama
be that?
Churba Tel Lasi Gorilla.
No.
No.
Samayimba. Who is already Sama,
No.
not Churpa.
The Pramana Rangwala. The Dil Karla.
Okay, now recite.
What is the...
Okay.
I don't think we can take any further questions. Lunch is already delayed by 33 minutes.
Just one little line. It's a bit of a confusion here. What is the role of extrasensory perception in the science of mind? That does it play no role? Intuition, extrasensory perception, which human beings really, maybe it is in the animal kingdom that they manifest much better than in the human mind. Can anybody explain that?
I don't think that's a minor question at all. It's a rather complex issue. So, would you care? Do you think you can do it in half a second?
Can you say that again? I'm not sure of your question very clearly.
something called extrasensory perception.
Extra.
Yeah.
What do you mean extra?
That is intuition.
Intuition.
Comes out of one's own. Each individual have their own individual.
Intuitive experience or intuitive.
What is intuition different from science of mind? Because science doesn't really look into the extrasensory perception in a person. Science normally takes, the testing of.
Oh yeah. Science. You mean there are some different discipline within the scientific community. There are some different, disciplines. I think, to my knowledge, I think there's some, there's no, I think, definite answer for the scientist that I think consciousness is different entity from the construct of neurons. Okay. There's no definite. I think there's no definite answer. Okay. There's no definitive answer. Scientific. As far as I know, scientists have not. How to say?
I think that's
come to a conclusion. Yeah.
Perhaps this is a question we can carry on tomorrow, since tomorrow is the session on science. We can have this conversation. Are you reciting as requested, or are we?
Just 2 lines now.
Yeah. Could you please? Yeah.
Mangalacharana normally happens in the beginning.
Pramana Bhutaya Jagadhiteshni Pranamya Shastri Sukataya Tayini. So this is the 2 line that I know. Thank you so much.
So I don't think any final words are appropriate after this. Thank you everyone for engaging so much. Thanks to all the speakers for this wonderfully productive session. And we will of course be carrying on these conversations tomorrow. So I won't even try to sum up anything. Let's proceed to lunch, which is long delayed. Lunch is being served just outside the hall.
Thank you for coming. I don't know. I think it can be manipulated. Somebody give